Here's a highlight from a recent episode of Booked on Rock. Ray Robertson, his brand new book titled Dust, More Lives of the Poets with Guitars. Danny Kirwan is maybe the most interesting musician to make this book. He is kind of lost in the history.
That's so good to hear you say that. That's so cool to hear you say that because he's very unknown.
This is a guy you can make a movie out of. It's a tragic story, but it's a fascinating story. And it's one of those, man, if he just maybe got some help and things could have turned out differently.
Different times, you know?
Yeah. He was with Fleetwood Mac from 68 to 72. Bare Trees from 72 is one of my favorite Mac tunes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, you're right, cool. For a former member of a world-famous rock and roll band, Danny Kirwan is remarkably little known, both in terms of the biographical details of his life and the wonderful music he created. He is not a legend. He is a mystery. The mystery part of his life is regarding his post-Fleetwood Mac years, right? That's when things get...
And I actually said the same thing that what you just said. I said, he deserves a biographer or a documentary. I tried to interest a couple people and they're like, oh, but I say, look, man, he was in Fleetwood Mac. It wouldn't be, he's not like he's unknown, but it's that period of Fleetwood Mac that no one, you talk about the Peter Green years and then the Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks years. There's this period in between. And for me, some of the music that Danny made and the fact that he joined the band when he was 18 years and 3 months old, not even of legal drinking age. And 4 months later, they have a number one song with Albatross with his song on the flip side. I mean, it's just too much, too quick. He's living with his mother in a basement apartment in Brixton. The next thing is he's traveling the world with this rock band, and he never really was a big drinker. He turns to drinking as a way for stress, and then Green leaves the band and he's pushed out front, And if you see the pictures of him, I try to describe him as best I can. He looks, he's got like the jug ears, the bowl haircut, the big blue eyes. He doesn't look like a grizzled blues rock guy, And they're like, and if you listen to the bootlegs, which I have of him playing live, he's the stage announcements. He sounds like he's apologized. This next song's a quiet number we're going to do now. It's like he's not that guy. He also wasn't a jammer. He liked to create perfect little songs. So again, antithetical to the time. But when he gets kicked out of the band in 72 at 22 years old, it's kind of over. He spends 3 years hanging around and then he gets a record contract in 75. The first one has some really nice stuff on it. If you strip away all the strings and horns and all the bullshit, the next two are abomination. And he basically ends up in a homeless shelter by the time he's 30 when he's not sleeping outside.
Sad.
Yeah. There's some quotes in there from Mick Fleetwood wrote two autobiographies. So he talks about the last time that he saw him because when they're touring Tusk, Rumors sells 20 million copies and Tusk only sells 8 million, but they're in England. And Fleetwood seems like a really nice guy. He looks to look after people. So somehow or another, he used his money and power to sort of get Danny's information and call him up and invite him over to the hotel because Fleetwood Mac's playing Wimberley that night. And he said, Danny said he had slept on a bench the night before and that he had worms. Fleetwood went to hug him. He's like, don't touch me. Do you want to come to the gig? No. Never sees him again. He lived in pubs and in his room and didn't play any more music. And I just find some of them, and that's where the title of the book, I'm so pleased that you're a fan because obviously Dust is a song off the last album, the last Danny Kirwan song that he made with Mac, the second last song on the album. And it's taken from a Rupert Brooke poem, who was a World War I poet, British poet. And he sort of chisels off the first two lines. And it's one of the most hauntingly beautiful evocations of the ephemerality of life and fatality. And he was just so young, We're not talking about painters or writers who sometimes get better as they get older. This stuff is often like lyric poets. It's when they're young with all that energy and passion and openness that closes up. The Dylans of the world who keep making interesting music, or the Neil Youngs or the Joni Mitchells. Like I listen to, I think Neil is right at the top until Rust Never Sleeps. And that's a long time to be making, popular music and still connecting that way. Where Danny, I think, is that kind of flame out that's more typical of like that brilliant flash in the sky that disappears. I just feel it's important that people need to know about Danny's music, and I think that they'll have a better life.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of Syd Barrett What happened on the night that they did fire Danny Kirwan? And that was in August of '72. We finally got to because he bailed right before a show.
He bailed before a show. Apparently, he not only was he drinking a lot, he didn't like his nerves were really bad, so he didn't eat. So that compounds the drinking. He's really, 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 really thin, really nervous, not sleeping, not eating, drinking. And apparently, by the end, it wasn't one incident. Fleetwood was the only one who sort of was the intermediary. Everyone else was, he said, asking Danny for a cigarette at that point was like asking for a fight. He would isolate himself, self-isolate. And apparently Bob Welsh, who was in the band by then, he had problems with Bob Welsh. And the night before the gig, the night of the gig, they were backstage getting ready to go on, and he smashed up his famous Les Paul and smashed his head against the wall and said, "I'm not going on stage." And you can do a lot of things to your bandmates, but you can't bail on them. You can't not play. And so they limped out there and finished the gig, but they're missing their lead guitar player. They're missing the guy who sings a lot of their songs. And the saddest thing that I found was that when Fleetwood told them that night at the hotel, he said that Denny didn't really know that there was a problem. Like, oh, really? I've been a ham. I thought that's not going to bode well for the rest of his life. Like, you don't think there's a problem,
No, that was just another day for him.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, well, yeah.
Wow.
And you're 22 years old. I mean, me at 21, I couldn't slap my ass with both hands at 22. It's like you're already now a has-been. I mean, that must just do your nut in entirely. The first album, Second Chapter, has some things. I write in the book about how someone released a compilation in 2000 that sort of strips away some of the extraneous instrumentation. That there's some beautiful songs in there, but you can already see he's sort of regressing back to the kind of music that the interesting thing about Danny is, and that generation of rockers is their record collection isn't just filled with rock music. He grew up on his mother's record collection, so a lot of jazz, music hall music, top 10, top 30 music in 1920, all these sorts of antiquarian musical forms. So it really enriches his style. If you just listen to rock, your sound's going to be, fairly limited that way. And what's interesting about him is that later on, when he does those solo albums, they almost return to this sort of antebellum kind of. It sounds like he's trying to make music for a different era, almost like he's willing himself to go back to his youth or his mother's youth. It's very painful stuff.
Yeah, I've never heard it. I've never heard the solo stuff, so I'm gonna give it a listen.
There's 4 songs off the second chapter, including the title track. But yeah, they threw everything. Danny wasn't a major player on this. His manager was there. And so, when in doubt, put violins. When in doubt, put horns, put things. And
then the next 2 after that, mostly cover songs, because he really wasn't writing all that much.
Songs that he had written 10 years before, new songs by people in the band. His manager wrote a song. Someone probably said, hey, he was in Fleetwood Mac. He's good. He used to be good looking anyway. He's a good looking young man. Sure, we're not going to throw a huge amount of money at him or anything. But the irony is that his first solo album after 2 years out of Mac is in '75, the year that the first Mac album comes out. The first one with Stevie Nicks and the one just before Rumors, and it sells, only 3 million or something. And then Rumors, and the last couple they're hard to listen to. He's clearly not he's not powering this. Someone else is sort of building a record around him so they can get a check.